Hey there, sovereignty seekers. It's time for another tarot on Tuesday. And today's session feels really personal. And I'm kind of laughing at myself that it feels so personal, considering the fact that my life just happens to be echoing a chapter of my own book. So those of you who've already read it know this story to a certain degree. I just happen to find myself reliving it. In a new way, because I think we so often are, peeling back the layers of the onion, pulling off layer after layer of evolution, adding to a story, reliving it in a new way, in a new cycle. It's the same but different. It's the following of patterns that sometimes we have to do until we break them. So with that introduction, this is a story, this is a tarot card, this is a place that I am that's really being with the moon right now. We just had that new moon yesterday, the new moon in Cancer. And because it's the second new moon in a month, they call it a black moon. And it seemed to be especially potent because what wasn't revealed in that first moment of beginning, because we see so much more in the shadows, right? Sometimes. What shadows weren't revealed the first time can come out the second time. And knowing that we are just at this end of Cancer, everything is very emotional. And when you look and think about emotions and trying to understand what was hidden, what's hiding in the shadows, what wants to be illuminated, the moon is really important to this. So I'm going to read to you a little section from chapter 6 of the Sovereignty Knot. And also let me just say that the themes feel similar right now. The chapter is the quest for partnership and the question of romantic love. And this particular section is dark moon love. One dark night, years after the vows were said and the babies born, I stood alone, pressing my face against the bathroom window, looking up and hoping for the impossible. There was nothing to see, but I longed to find some measure of comfort in the light I knew I wouldn't find. I sought confirmation in the shadow. Somewhere I'd read that this particular new moon in Gemini was all about yearning and recognizing our own lack of influence over the earth. I needed to think about what kind of influence I actually had over my own life. My ideas of sovereignty told me that I had quite a lot, but then why did I feel so powerless? Some astrologer's blog said, "This is the time to bring ourselves into alignment with the deeper current of sacred becoming in our own life." It was grammatically unwieldy, and like all generalized astrology, it only makes sense if you needed and wanted it to. This was a night when I needed things to make sense for me. The words were failing me, so I just squinted up to the clear, dark skies and looked for my reflection in the absent moon. Now, the reason this particular section is called Dark Moon Love is that it was a moment in which I recognized that as committed as I was to staying in my marriage, that particular love affair was not going to be at the core of my life. And part of that is the process of moving round the sovereignty knot from the princess who is in so many ways so enraptured by romantic love into the queen, whose role is so much more about caretaking and management and saying there is all of that romance and love and there's more. There is the creative life, there is the all the ways in which we express ourselves, not necessarily through romance and through partnership. The partnership is often key to success in moving through. So I'll admit that I feel like I'm again in that space and I'm looking at the patterns and saying, maybe this is a new moon thing for me. Maybe these are moments when I start feeling very vulnerable and more than a little bit empty, because of course I often bleed with the moon. So this is hormones happening here too. I look for something outside of myself. I look to my partner, my husband. I look to the moon. And sometimes they're not there. And what do I do in those moments of great, enormous absence? This is, of course, that reminder to come back to my own sense of sovereignty, my own sense of I can hold myself. I know that I can root into the earth and find my footing with the belly of the mother. I know that I can reach my arms, my hair up into the stars, because those don't ever disappear. We may have cloudy nights, but you always know they're there. And remember that it's possible to be anchored and sovereign, even when the people around you aren't necessarily showing up the way you think you might need them to. Because as those of you who've read this book know that I am, and I'm not even sure if these are my words or if somebody else used them to describe the book, that I am unapologetically partnered. In that is how I know that I'm built. And that partnership is very vital to how I get to move through the world. And sometimes, especially at the dark moon, I find that I want to be held in a different way. So I turn this to you. Whether you are in a partnership or not, whether you are in the first bloom of a relationship or you've been with someone for years, if this particular new moon has been calling up these energies that say, I look up to the sky and there's nothing there, I look across the room to the person who I need this certain kind of support from and it's not there right now, sit with that and be with that. So much of this book is also about saying, right now, if I can look at this particular life, this particular relationship, this set of parameters I have, and say, I can make this work, then I stay. And if I look around and I say, this isn't working anymore, there's too much of me that's feeling unfulfilled, then it's time to have other conversations. So this may be a moment for you, just to look around, to look to the light of the changing moon, to the dark of the changing moon, and ask it to illuminate both the light parts and the shadows of you and where you are right now in your quest for personal sovereignty, for spiritual sovereignty, for creative sovereignty, and ask yourself what relationship you're having with another. I don't have any answers. I don't have any answers for myself right now, other than I can continue to communicate with my own partner, and I can look within and saying, what is it that I don't have that I'm asking for him to provide? Is it, there's enough happening right now with all of this uncertainty. Wow, we're all looking for some extra support. And maybe it's within the current relationship, and maybe it's from the right books, from sisterhood, from finding something new that we're passionate about. And maybe it's a new person we're passionate about. Part of sovereignty is reaching out and reaching in to possibilities and to reimagining the way things are within the container you live, or by smashing that container against the ground and starting over. I have no answers. I have a place to hold your questions, because I can promise you that I'm holding them too. This idea of imagining actually came up in yesterday's video over in the Magic Words Collective. So if you are in a space where you want to be thinking about imagining and reimagining, actually in this particular deck, I use the Celtic Wisdom deck by Kathleen Matthews. All the major arcana have new names. And the moon is called the Imaginer. I hadn't even realized that when I drew that card for today. That is clearly the theme for this week. To be inside of our reality with all of its messiness and all of its pain, and to continue to imagine and to reimagine what daily life can look like and what our fantasy worlds really are, and how one needs to inform the other, perhaps, because we always are in that dance, the inner and the outer world, that which we know is true and real and that which we can imagine. So if you would like to dive deeper into these messages from tarot and how they tie in with the sovereignty knot, I remind you that I'm always here to do a reading for you. If you haven't gotten your copy of the sovereignty knot yet, I'm going to the post office today, just a few hours, and I'd love to mail you a copy with your own one-card reading. It's called a sovereignty note that I put in the box with every signed copy of the book that I send out. I wish you the deepest blessings. The good news is that moon, she's already turned. There's a first crescent already up there in the sky. We've moved through this dark moon energy. If you still need to learn from it, keep dancing. Tell me what this dark moon's been like for you. And as ever, I wish for you to be sovereign everywhere.